Already. We're already ready.
Yes, we are already ready. And this is Candia Raquel, and you are at the Sensual Sessions Podcast, the place to explore sensing pleasure through your senses and moving in a way that it's free from inhibition and full of self expression. If you haven't already, subscribe to get these episodes delivered on your inbox every week. Just head on to my over to my website, candiaraquel.com, which is www.candiaraquel.com. And today we have a very special guest. This is the Clare Maxwell. She's a dancer, a dance artist, an Alexander technique teacher, and she does amazing stuff with cranial nerve sequencing. And I am utmostly delighted to have her here for the first time because it's like a check-in of where we're going. We are heading to episode number 150 already. And yeah,
Woohoo!
woohoo! And Claire has
Wow.
been here since the beginning, trusting in this vision. And it's like, yeah, like a checking in, how we're going, how we're doing. So tell us, Claire, how you're doing.
Well, I'm doing really well in the midst of, like it's not exactly chaos, right? Like you're in Mexico, I'm in the United States. There's things going on that people have been planning for a long time, you know what I mean? And I was just doing a podcast yesterday, and I've started asking this question at the end of the podcast. So, if more people knew what we've just been talking about, how would the world be different? How would the world be a better place? And he was like, yeah, we wouldn't have Trump in office.
To start with,
And I was like, in my mind, I was going like, well, I understand what you mean, but how do we jump from here to there, you know? But, then he brought it around. He was like, we are social creatures. The more that we're in communion with our bodies, the more we're in reality, the more we're in reality, the better choices we make. And people are getting lost in realities that don't exist, So I think our work helps people stay in touch with this
yes.
um, living biological reality. And what were you asking me when we started talking? When we started talking, um, you asked me a question, and I
Yeah,
said, let's hit the record button because that's how it is.
yeah, this is so good. We were talking about tending to your inner beast because Claire recorded a wonderful video for YouTube as a radical response of of the world going on fire when this chaos just started. And she was like, no, 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 you,
When Trump won the election, I think it was right. Like
yeah,
it was like pretty soon after that,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah,
I'm not remembering the video that I made, but maybe we can put a link to it in the
yeah, yeah, for
yeah.
sure. I am linking it below. And like, I was panicked for my US friends when I saw like shit hitting the fan. And like in Mexico, like trying to demolish the judiciary and co-opting the human rights and everything started like half a year earlier. So like I had already overcome main part of the shock. I'm still shocked, but now I am functioning because
Yeah.
like there were a couple of months I lost sleep, and I held on to whatever I could of somatic resources. And like, oh, there's a little pleasure presenting to this moment in the shape of, I don't know, soup. Let's delight because this brings me back to joy and reality and how things should be. And like, and then it happened in the US. And I am fascinated by your response. Like,
Hmm.
okay, we are being apparently derailed by a beast outside of us that seems like very powerful, politically powerful. But it
A
doesn't,
bully, a bully
yeah.
with a lot of power. There's a lot of power in the hands of the bullies now. So I think we all instinctively feel that in our inner beast.
Yes, yes,
And so much I think the reason I said that was because I saw my own inner beast just being subjected to too much fear. And then from the fear comes the anger. And from the anger comes the attack. And I'm attacking friends that disagree. And I'm just creating more chaos, more suffering. And this is not the true nature of my beast.
exactly. It's not.
And so we have to tend. I saw, oh, I need to tend, because if I don't, um, right now, we need more um, beauty,
Yes.
more gratitude. I mean, look, we both got up today. We had enough to eat. The air is clean. We're breathing in and out. The
That's
trees have grown again. It's spring here, and the trees have grown again. And we're really aware of where the problems are, even in the environment. It's like, even now, just saying that, I'm like worried about the trash in the park or whatever. But, so yeah. So I'll talk more about that. But I remember you and I, as we were planning this conversation, we got on this topic of trying to find a different way of talking about self-regulation, which is kind of like what a therapist would call this. So, oh, I need to regulate myself. Oh, I need to control myself. But that doesn't feel adequate or actually part of the solution in a way. And I understand what's meant by regulation, like creating conditions where the nervous system can rebalance itself. So important. But if we can get away from semantics, there's something about how embodiment work, fitness work, health, wellness becomes about control. And something about it is just itching me the wrong way these days.
Yes, yes. Language is tricky, and regulation, like, it depends, because if it's new regulations that banish women's right imposed by the far right, it's like fuck regulation. Even if it's in the nervous system, no, because
Yeah.
because it's not an organic term. Regulation, it's like a framed imposed in this view of mine now. And what I like about somatic work and embodiment is that it's not so prescriptive. It's not rigid in a set way to do it, as in contrast with, for example, Pilates, that I love, but it's like inhale when I say and exhale when I say. And on this time frame, as you're doing this movement, while you're stabilizing this other part of your body, it's like very segmental and it's very controlled. And to my surprise, and to the surprise of many people, the work of somatics, that is focusing your attention on your sensation, it's immensely powerful, because you realize how simply sensing consciously, deliberately, reorganizes your whole self into a better state, better as anything that you could deliberately, consciously tried to do. Like the outcome is like 1,000 folds better, faster, stronger, fast and furious than the regulation way.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the problems is that when we say the word regulation, because we live in a culture that prefers brain for everything, we're thinking about cortical, like a cortical activity. And, you know, every somatic therapist knows that when we're talking, you know, the body of wisdom underneath the word regulation is all the different ways that we can bring our conscious mind, our cortical mind, into communion with the unconscious, unconscious meaning not controlled by my consciousness biology, right? Which is the majority of our functioning is not managed. So somatics in a simple form to say, oh, I'm having a sensory experience right now. Right away, that's a cortical prompt. That's almost like taking your cortex and getting on a little ride into the, you know, like a little, it's like an amusement park, you know, or something. And or the today, my metaphor for today that arose out of my teaching today was a forest. It's like you take a step into the forest, you know, and all of a sudden you realize you have to rely on more than just your conscious mind. You know you're going north. That's helpful to know, but you have to feel your feet. You have to listen. There's an environment that's alive, and right away you start relating to it without even thinking about it, because that's what we're evolved to do. So we ourself are the forest also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Or that's how I'm thinking about it today. Sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you.
No, wonderful. And it's also like trusting in the totality of yourself and not, yeah, and the hierarchizing yourself, because yeah, we tend to think that the brain is the end all be all and consciousness is end all be all, and that subscribes to our hustle Western culture of making things happen. That it's great in many ways, but it's idle and ineffective in the sense that there is so much that you do not need to force, and that actually is a given, and that you can get where you want faster and in a more efficient way if you go with the flow, with the right flow.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, it's a bad idea to destroy the national parks in the US. That won't provide more riches, not even to the richest. What would make a huge amount of capital gain, like if you're really in that mindset, would be to preserve nature and to capitalize on it. Like, okay, this is already like, don't kill the chicken of the golden eggs, like clone it.
Eh,
No.
yeah, we can't even we can't even, I mean, there was that whole thing about the wolf, you know, but then the whole thing was like, but if there's no environment left for the wolf, and I'm not even sure what, if they really did clone the wolf, they brought a part of the wolf's cellular wisdom
Yeah, only
alive,
the
but they didn't,
hairs.
only the hairs.
Yeah, yeah, it's like they cloned the
Oh,
hair of Marilyn Monroe, but just the hair.
ah.
Like, well, you want the whole package. And there's this, I think it's an outdated, dangerous paradigm of believing that we can control everything because, first off, the chessboard of reality rearranges and moves at every step. We are we are physically complex systems, and the world is a complex system. And just the chemical cocktail of the atmosphere is super complex. But still, we want to box things and create a hierarchy of the brain or a politician or believe that we can impose control in ourselves, like through nervous system regulation. And of course, being dysregulated, we know what is to be like melting, falling apart. It's a horrible experience.
It's a very difficult experience. And I just, you know, I understand how many people, I mean, I myself have experienced that in my life. Um, if that is happening to you and you don't know how to respond and you can't control it, and it's causing harm to other people, how you behave when you get dysregulated, like just the ability to know that you're dysregulated is huge. This is the first step to getting familiar with your beast, you know?
Yes, yes.
Like, oh,
And
you know,
that,
like I'm a woman in the United States. I'm dysregulated, and that's sane, right? Because I'm losing control over my body. Or, I mean, even everybody in the United States is like, oh, now I could be put in jail with no due process if I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it looks like it's just people who are newcomers, visitors, you know, immigrants, as they are called. Um, oh, it's just them. But even when you say that, like if you go, oh, it's just those people, you can feel that in your body. If you're feeling your body, you can feel, oh, wait a minute, it's not just them. And then the fear comes, right? But then we have a chance to relate to each other and to share some of this flow, and to find solutions or ways to help each other. You know, I mean, so I want to be very careful, but it's just something about that like regulation word. Maybe we'll find as we
yeah,
both
yeah.
discussed,
We
it's
are,
like nap time. So my mind is not coming up with brilliant, you
yeah,
know,
and
a new word,
I
some kind of
I
new
am
word.
loving that we are doing a live exploration, experimentation, and research. So we are not like making final statements in this episode, but we are taking all the sensualists with us in the ride. And the thing is that when we are dysregulated, we want to get a sense of agency. And that's why I believe it's being so financially successful, all this marketing of regulate your nervous system. But I think it's the intention is good, but the approach is wrong because the approach of regulation to me is reinforcing the means that cause the dysregulation, meaning like separation and control and rigidity in a certain way. That's what the word regulation connects me to, and also to my experiences doing the some techniques of emotional regulation and nervous system regulation, etc. So I am very, very, very curious to ask you, okay, we know that we are dysregulated, meaning we know that we are getting derailed, that we are not flowing in our regular rhythm, maybe not sleeping as well, maybe not eating too much or too little, maybe being more cranky than useful than used.
Stomach upset.
Yeah, like
more chronic issues. That's
yeah.
so it's like things are not getting, they're not balancing out. They're getting a little bit worse.
Yeah, and it's like your consciousness, it's not being enough to keep it under control. It already the situation that you're going through already filtered into the unconscious processes that keeps us going. So then my question is, how can we tend to our inner beast?
I'm just letting there be some space
for your beast to come.
For my beast. Don't regulate me.
Yes.
I'm just thinking about, what do I actually do? I think in our somatic practices, it depends on where you are, right? In the moment. It depends on what is the dysregulation that you're experiencing in that moment. So everything is circumstantial. So one thing I find myself doing, if I'm dysregulated and I'm in a place where I've been still for a while and there's a lot of talking going on and something is said that I'm just like, I try to politely give myself permission to move if it's possible, right? Just to move my body and to feel the movement. This isn't Alexander technique. This isn't any technique. This is just like
move.
The beast. Move. Let me move, right? I don't try to calm myself down.
Thank you for giving us permission to not try to calm ourselves down.
Yeah. You know how when you're pissed off and somebody says, calm down, you're like, it just makes you want to, yeah. So in whatever context you are, is there a respectful way that you can step back out of the limelight? Can you step out of the room? Often if I'm in a freer environment, that's a little bit more open and less socially structured, I find that I can literally just stand up and move a little or stretch a little. And that after maybe 3 minutes of that, I see one or two people doing the same thing on the edges of the space, to look away from the center of what's happening, to open my view, to take in the bigger world than the thing that's messing me up. If I'm reading the newspaper and I'm like, okay, put it down for a second and actually feel the feelings, which means I don't read the whole paper because I'll never get through the paper, So that's one. Move. Shake if I need to. Sometimes if it's with a person, and you know them really well, and you could just be like, don't say fuck off or like I hate you or you're a fucking idiot. Don't, those are like the cortical things, right? Just like,
my dogs do that to me in my face. Every time I tell them to like behave.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it works. And I even get even more pissed off because it's like, don't shake it off on me. And then they shake it harder.
Right. And that's an interesting example, right? Because you know that it's really they're a dog and you have to be the grown up.
Yes, and you have to be
That
the
if you
grown up.
don't regulate, if you don't calm yourself down, if you don't regulate your nervous system, they're not going to calm down. They don't care what you say, they care how you are.
Bam. Yeah.
So I think we all, when we think about relating to animals, we all have that ability, I hope. You know, if children aren't taught it when they're young, sometimes they get bit by dogs or whatever, if they don't understand how to approach an animal, you know. So when you're approaching your own nervous system, that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. You're approaching an animal in the forest. You see, so it's almost it's the approach.
It's
The approach. So then what else do? I lie down on the floor. That's better if you're tired or if you're really jacked up and you can't let go. I just lie down. Sometimes I lie down on my belly. Sometimes I lie down on my back. Sometimes I do both. Lie down's great. Just getting more physical support for your structure.
Yeah, right onto the body.
So, hey, this is like a really interesting lesson right here. What a great like blog post or something, you know?
Yeah.
And these are all practices that are there are very sophisticated forms of them, beautiful forms of them in different somatic practices. But then there's also, you could just have an animal relationship to the basic practice.
Yes.
See, so this is where I think is a little bit of a barrier to people actually utilizing. Well, you know, I'm always talking about prequels, like the more fundamental building blocks of some of our very sophisticated practices. So I'm taking one of the very sophisticated neurological nervous system practices, Alexander technique, and I'm kind of trying to work backwards.
Yes.
You know, so I think I just saw a blog post or some kind of social media thing yesterday selling a course about strengthening your muscles using the Alexander technique, which is great because it isn't just about relaxing, it's about toning up. But the person was saying it was kind of like strengthen your back so you don't need to lie down. And I was like, well, why wouldn't you want to do a lie down?
Yeah. Why?
But anyway, like, why do those two things have to be opposed, right? So this is what happens when we get prescriptive, when we have protocols, when we have ideals that we start to set up. We forget about the range of capacity that we have, and we start preferencing one aspect. And what you said right at the beginning is, this already works. This is millions of years of biological intelligence, evolution that is so beyond one person's understanding, but has just transposed from cell to cell through time, you know, and it works. So that said, I wanted to get a little bit into cranial nerve sequencing.
Yay.
Any responses though?
Yeah.
Because so this just happened today. I was like, oh, this is where the approach, the approach was too quick, you know?
Yeah, it needed
to a practice. But I
organize.
wanted to give you a chance to respond a little bit. Anything you wanted to
Ah,
say?
yes, yes. Embracing the prequels, like don't make it too sophisticated on your cortical rational level. Leave that to your inner beast, because that's the really complex, refined, sophisticated epitome of evolution in you, your unconscious. Like you don't want to even think the amount of endocrine reactions you are orchestrating in this very moment unconsciously. Like if it
Preach. I don't even know.
yeah,
I don't
I
know
was
anything
thinking,
about the
okay,
endocrine
the
system.
liver, the kidneys, the amygdala, the thymus gland. It's like I already took 5 seconds counting just the organs where some of that happens. I am my conscious mind is so sluggish and slow. So it's like, okay, let's be humble and don't pretend that from this corner of yourself, you're gonna pretend to regulate the rest that is actually doing all the work so you can be here breathing, standing, thinking regulation nonsense. And just moving, walking to the edges of the space, doing the dishes if you are on an uncomfortable Christmas dinner, or just shaking if you are with your trusted beloved. And that
or like you said, this tasting the soup.
yeah, and that,
Another twist on the move is move to please yourself.
yes, move to please yourself.
Move to please
And then
yourself.
it's like giving leeway, giving license to your inner beast to do what she knows or it knows, which is like keeping your shit together.
He does probably know when to keep it together so you can get through the day and then, go curl up in your corner and just. But I think the problem, I mean, at least my personal challenge with self-regulation is too much of it. So I get really good at just being, a little disassociated. No, oh yeah, a high tolerance for stress.
Yes, a good
Yeah,
buffer.
yeah. So the only way, actually, I would say, it might not be true for everyone, but for me, developing a meditation practice where I am consciously, I wouldn't say, here's my attitude towards it. I'm not being still, but I'm being willing to not gear up the motor mind, what I call my motor mind. And that is very challenging for me. But through not filling my nervous system with sensory pleasure and information, I started to notice other inner things, which is pretty private, but they get labeled emotion, they get labeled thought. And I realized I'd been missing a lot of my own inner life. So, stillness also. And it's not comfortable for me. So, I had to start with little bits and build. I can't tell you the first time I did a whole day retreat or a whole day sit. I was like, that's insane. But for me, I think all of my movement work and my somatic practice supported me in staying alive. And of course, we're never still, we're always moving, allowing the inner movement, even though my ass was just in one place. So these are all things that humans have been doing and practicing for a long time,
Yes. And at the core is movement. Inner beast like to move.
Inner beast likes to move. Inner beast also has an alert, has a deep rest state and an alert state, and they're all good for different things. I mean, it's amazing when you watch animals that if they hear something they don't know what it is, especially a deer, or I don't have that many animals around me, they're so still. And they just become one with what their environment so that because the eye picks up motion, right? So, and
Yeah.
they can stay that way for a long time. I don't think they're stressed out, but they're definitely
Alert.
on alert, and they're definitely heightened,
Yeah, they are ready to snap if the tiger jumps, but otherwise they are good
Yeah.
staying put.
Why waste the energy?
Why was and when we try to regulate or to control ourselves, it's like a freezing state in the nervous system
It can be.
instead of the state of the deer or the gazelle to be quiet but not frozen. Be quiet with the but flowing in your inner movement of your blood flowing, pulsating, and being at one with everything. So I feel that's the next like the skill level of survival that prevents falling into the survival response that is a physiological freezing or physiological fighting and real fighting. But previous to that state, I think we are culturally missing this ability to create a buffer in the situation, gazelle wise, of letting the muddy water settle. So so you have like the clarity to see through and move.
Yes, and to perceive, which is what our nervous system is, both to move us, to keep us alive, but also for us to perceive and receive. And I think in popular culture, there's more knowledge about somatics and trauma, which is the nervous system in certain states, right? And we neglect all the other prequel colors,
Yeah.
right? And nuances and states that we can be in. Or they even get put down as, perhaps not worthy, or I don't have time for that, and that in itself, I think is the groundwork that lays the groundwork for trauma. So, we just shouldn't be charging so much money. We should just be saying, we do say these things, and people honestly have such crazy lives that they literally can't go out for a walk. I mean, I sometimes struggle to get the time to go out for a walk on one day, but I've made a practice. I use my cortex, to go, this is not dispensable, because then I'm in the botanical garden and all of a sudden I still myself because it's pleasurable.
Yeah.
Not because it's an emergency, but because if I still myself, I hear more. I see the movement of the birds and the leaves and the wind. And my nervous system is so fed by that. That's what my nervous system is designed for, is to give me that food. So I think that it's that. Let us practice with that capacity we have consciously every day, so that we're better resourced when things get worse.
Yeah. So we can come back to feeling like ourselves again faster. And how does cranial nerve sequence supports this prequel of or buffer that has a lot to do with pleasure?
Well, every nerve, there's 12 cranial nerves, and they function to bring you sense information, impulses from different sense organs. Some of them move those organs. The big one is the vagus, which is for most of the parasympathetic activity in your body, and most of the functioning that's below the level of consciousness, or a lot of it. But that's only one of them. And all of this is above your spinal cord. This is all above the top of your spine. So and it's just a wonderland. It's like this wonderful menagerie that you can visit. So if you have the proper attitude with learning the anatomy and mapping where it is, and you're curious about knowing the function, right? Understanding, oh, this is a dog, So I can guide you through a little simple, the first two nerves. Yes. And I'll just I'm not going to give you a lot of science at all, but just where they're located so that we can practice together and people could follow along. So in the base of your nose, when you pick your nose there?
Yeah.
The septum right there, there's a little tiny pit.
Wow, I have a little tiny pit there.
Yeah, you can't feel it because it's a vestigial organ. It does have a nerve. It's called the vomeronasal organ. It does have a nerve, but the nerve is so fine and it doesn't go to your brain anymore. So it's not really considered. But its function, it's left over from when we were in water and we sensed chemicals in the water. And in a lot of mammals, like horses and cats that go like this, horses do that. Uh-huh. They're kind of squooging that organ, and it perceives hormones, pheromones.
Wow.
But that doesn't get to your brain anymore, or so they say.
This is going to be my next dating seduction gesture.
So this is the first, it's cranial nerve 0 because it's not in the anatomy books really. And they would have to renumber everything. So I call it cranial nerve 0. And then the next one, if you put your fingers up here and in your imagination, right between, kind of like a little bit between your eyebrows, and you go back like 1/4 of an inch, your brain is sitting there in your skull, and right under your brain, there's this little olfactory bulb. Mm-hmm. And it has tendrils that go down into your nostrils. So those little tendrils have the ability to perceive 500 different chemicals, and they from that, they send the message into your olfactory bulb. And your olfactory bulb is the only nerve that doesn't go through your brainstem at all. It goes straight into your brain. Limbic system goes straight to your hippocampus and your amygdala and right into the limbic brain. Straight in there. Straight to the
It's feral.
feral. Yeah.
Wow.
So just taking in that information, let that wash over you. And if you want to practice with us, you can lie down. You might want to be supported. I'm going to stay kind of upright. And you don't have to close your eyes, but it can be helpful because often when you close your eyes, the sensory experience of your body, it shifts. It's no longer contained by the image that you have of yourself, and it becomes a little more expansive. So it can be very helpful. And you're going to step into the forest of your body and be curious about the animal of your breathing. You do not want to freak your breathing out. You're just really curious. Is it there? Is it happening? How do you know? What signs do you have that you are breathing? What signals, sensations? So it's there, it's happening. It's not the only thing happening, but it's definitely an animal in the forest. And you can just enjoy its presence. And one place where you can sense and feel its presence is in your nostrils, especially at the base. So when you're receiving air, when there's a breath coming in, it's a little cooler and you feel a temperature change. And when it's going out and you're giving air to the world, it's a little warmer. So you can feel that change. And just that little organ is right down there because of that. It's like a little quiet witness to the air coming and going. And so every time there's an in-breath, even though the information doesn't get to your brain, it is received by this little organ, and the impulses go somewhere in these little fine nerve fibers that kind of dissipate in your face. So you can experience that from a kind of a still place. And then if you wish, if those little animals of organs could move a little bit, you can experiment with just making little tiny movements from that place. And those movements are so animated by the breathing, the animal of your breathing. So you can let those two things kind of get to know each other a little bit in the forest. And this little tiny movement of that organ can echo and expand and spread throughout your whole body. So you don't have to isolate that place from the rest of you. from the forest, you know. And then once you're satisfied with that, in your consciousness, very carefully and respectfully, quietly, you can travel up inside your nostrils. Because if you can feel the air, there are many different sinus spaces between your eyes, above your eyes, and in your cheeks. And that little olfactory bulb is sitting up there, just a little bit higher than your eyes, sending its little tendrils down, kind of like the roots in the forest, you know, that get chemical messages from the soil, and they're all talking to each other under the soil, and we never even know it. The roots. And whatever chemicals are in the air in your space where you are, all of that information, even if you're not conscious of it at all, is traveling through the breath right into your brain. So it's almost like, sometimes I think of it as like circulation in my limbic system, like, oh, it's breathing, you know? It's not breathing air, but it's breathing the impulses that the nerve is sending. And if you want to try to smell a distinct scent in your environment, sometimes if you just bring your hand up, you can smell the difference between your chemical scent and what's around you. And so this is a really different breathing. This organ is a little higher up. And so you can experiment with allowing the organ and the breathing to move and dance and play a little bit together. And really slowly open your eyes and see what it's like to have this breathing as a sensory wisdom that is actually primary to the reception of light and color and shape, right? So this is a sensory background that comes before vision. Yeah. That's the end of the practice.
Though the practice continues in the background of my attention somehow, I felt it permeated into my unconscious. And I feel that this little animal of the olfactory organ in the septum was very happy to be acknowledged, and then the olfactory bulb as well. And when they like become like the center of attention, was almost as if the totality of the forest that I am came to life. And it's like, wow, like I am in sensual mode now. And it's like, actually, this feels like home, like my inner forest, and like having all these layers of sensitivity that are like doing their thing. They are not like walled off by rationality, and at the same time, like I can articulate words properly. Like I feel things are on their place, on their very complex and organized ways, and it feels so good. tending to my
Yeah.
beast. Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. This feels good and empowering, but not in an scandalous way, but like, oh, okay. Feel I am sensing the warmth of my skin and my body. And I am feeling
Mm.
like my toes and my hairs behind the ears, and like I can proudly say that I am present.
I love it. And, for me as a performer, somebody who has a certificate in breathing coordination, who's studied breathing a lot, it was news to me that breathing has a sensory function. So I'm not sure why, but for me, this is somehow indirectly, there are many ways that we can consciously control our breathing, and they're all wonderful and important.
Yes.
But using the vestigial organ, which I love because we don't even know what that is, so your brain can't lock on that. And then the smell, it's a different way in to, without the breathing, those first early senses, there's no information for us. So there's something I'm still getting to know about how to approach the breath respectfully. And this has been a very powerful way in to a different kind way of calming my nervous system down. Smell.
Yeah.
Smell. Yeah. Not trying to calm my breathing, not trying to breathe slowly. Yeah, that's, I think, what aromatherapy and many, it's all, there's something there. Otherwise, people wouldn't be practicing these things.
And it's as simple as stop to smell the roses.
Yeah, or yourself, or something that's alive, a plant, or something in your spice cabinet.
I thought a spider.
No, not a spider. So, I mean, I lost my sense of smell with COVID, and that was a horrid experience. I didn't want to eat anything. So, underappreciated.
Underappreciated, but it's super important smell. It
so maybe it's
primal.
It's primal. So maybe it's not regulation. Maybe it's sensory communion, nervous system communion, nervous system exploration.
Sensory exploration.
That's the best I can come. I like communion.
Communion.
Because it's two-way.
Yeah. It's two-way. It's like the gazelle being still at one with all. So I feel that what we were complaining in the beginning of regulation is something with an isolation approach rather than oneness and communion, because breathing itself it's an act of communion. It's taking the world in and exhaling and pouring yourself into the world. So tell us, how can we know more about tending to our inner beast, pouring ourselves into the world fearlessly, but without depleting ourselves, and cranial nerve sequencing and Alexander technique?
All these things. Yeah, just follow your beast. If something interested you, I'm sure Candia will put some links in the description box or with the podcast. I'm in the middle of a cranial nerve sequencing course right now, so that'll be finishing up soon, but I'm going to run another one probably over the summer, late summer, when people can take a little bit of a break. Anybody is welcome. In particular, Really interested in working with therapists who have some somatic training, but may not have experienced this way of communing with their own body maps, their own anatomy, the basic building blocks that make up all of their bodies of wisdom, right here in their bodies, not in a book, but right here in this. So that's kind of half of who's coming, but anybody is welcome. And a lot of somanauts who are interested in learning more about the central nervous system are coming. And otherwise, I'm always teaching privately. I have a weekly dance class. I'm always doing things. So
Always
just check out the website, embodiedlearningsystems.com.
Yes. Thank you so much, Claire. It's been a wonderful episode and great talking to you again.
All right, this is our third time, and it is such a pleasure to have an ongoing dialogue with someone who really understands from the inside out. So this is not some surface podcast. These are the deep explorers, right? So what an honor to be in this company of the people that you've been speaking with. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Claire. I am truly
peace and love.
Also, thank you, Sensualists, for being here. Go to embodiedsystems.com and follow claremaxwell.com in Instagram, right?
Embodied Learning Systems.
Embodied Learning Systems.
I'm not really that present on Instagram. Try the website and then you'll find, I have a YouTube channel. So we'll put that in the chat too. Awesome. The YouTube channel, I do content every other week. So
yeah, it's going to be the link here below on the description box. And also, if you haven't already, go grab the free guide to Awaken Sensuality at my website, candiaraquel.com, www.candiaraquel, long Mexican name, .com. And do remember to take the time to sense your fire so you can share the flame.